recently had some students ask me about reharmonizing songs with more jazz chords. So I think a great study for that would be something that is blues based, but a little more jazzy. So I was playing with the song Can't Buy Me Love by the Beatles the other day, and it makes a great study for reharmonizing some jazz chords. So the version that I play has got that first part with just the C down to F, and then of course G and back to C7 using standard mid-neck jazz positions, and it's got that turnaround and the bridge that goes to the 6, which we'll get to in a second. But first of all, let's talk about the fact that you have, you know, a good 4 bars of that C7. And my first thought is to use a classic cliche, which basically goes C7 to C6. And if we pull that pointer finger down, it's a bit of a stretch, we have a C add flat 13, flatting the 6th note, back up to the C6, and then the C7. So that gives us this stationary color with some internal moving tones without having to change the chord shape itself. So in other words, instead of a whole bunch of C7, we now have this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very nice. All the work's being done with the index finger right there. Then we have the F9 chord, and we're going to do a similar idea where we're going to play one measure of F9, and then we're going to play an F7 flat 9, so that 9th note right here, hit by the pinky, is going to drop down a fret. The best way to get that, I think, is to use a partial bar by leaning over that index finger and keeping the rest of the shape. So we have this kind of a move. Okay, and it's going to sound like this. Kind of dissonant, but it moves right back to the C7. And then we do the same cliche, C7, C6, C7, and then we're about to go to the G chord, the 5 chord in the song, so we're going to do a passing chord with an A flat diminished. Okay, let's talk about why that works. So basically, it's a substitute for the secondary dominant. The root is C, we're about to go to the 5 chord. The secondary dominant that's going to pull to that 5 would be a D7 or a D7 altered. But if you play a diminished chord a half step higher, 1 fret higher than the chord you're substituting, it works really good. It creates basically a version of a 7 flat 9. So instead of going C to D7 altered down to that G7, we're going to replace that D7 with essentially what could be considered an A flat diminished. So we get this. We land on the G chord. We're going to make it a G13 just for fun. Okay, and then the turnaround happens again. And then back to the C7, C6, C add flat 13 with that stretch, C6, C7, okay, and then we're back to the 4 chord. But when we go to the F chord this time, and this starts in the chart that I use around measure 17, we go F9, we're going to push that pinky up to get an F sharp 9, and then basically bar at the 10th fret with the pinky on the first 2 strings, getting essentially a street legal F13, and then go back to the F7 sharp 9. So that movement here is the same, what we call internal voice leading, where the chord position pretty much stays the same, but we have a note inside the chord moving up or down chromatically to give color to the motion. So we have now F9, F7 sharp 9, F13 with the partial bar, back to F7 sharp 9, and that's going to sound like this in context. Real slick, real jazzy, real trendy. Then we go back to the C chord, okay, and then what we're going to do is drop down to another voicing of the C, all right, and we kind of substitute a couple frets, chromatic substitution up or down either way right there. Back to our friend the A flat diminished. Then the next page is on measure 21 with that G13 chord, moving chromatically down to the F13. Back again, and then we're going to substitute that G flat 13th with a B minor 7 flat 5, which is basically an altered dominant substitute for the 5 chord of that key. So, and that pulls us back to the C major 7, which is really, really kind of cool. So that last turnaround for that first part, starting on measure 21, would be this. Alright, now the bridge starts with an E minor 7, and we're going to go to an E flat minor 7, which walks down to the A minor 7, to our friend A flat 7 flat 5, and that's a really cool jazz chord leading to the D minor 7, to the basically G7 sharp 5, C major 7. So that is a really slick move there. So the beginning of the bridge starting on measure 26 is E minor 7, and up to the D minor 7, G7 sharp 5, up to the C major 7. Alright, basically the same phrase. So we're doing that E minor 7, a bit of B flat diminished, pulling down to the A minor 7, partial D minor 7, D9, 13, which is really, really slick. Okay, so that's going to sound like this. Okay, great turnaround there. And then we're back to what's essentially a variation of the first part, the verse. So we have that C6, the C flat 13, back to C6, C7, all right, and that kind of goes in a bit of a circle there, just like we did before. And then over to the F9, F sharp 9, and then we're going to basically do a little bit of a walk down with the C6, and then B6 for a second, like a nanosecond. And then basically we land at the last measure line there, at the last bar there at the bottom with that G13, walking chromatically, of course, to our F13. And then back up to the G13. And this really cool partial F13. A C9. So the moral of the story is, when you're re-harmonizing a tune with jazz chords, you're basically looking for ways to either create movement inside of the chord position or use chord substitutions. And that allows you to basically not play what's written on the page, but still sound like the song, sort of, which is the jazz way. You're kind of hanging out outside the strict tonality of the original piece. So that was my study in jazz chords for the Beatles song Can't Buy Me Love. There'll be the chart in the link below the video, and of course please go to jamalong.org and do a live lesson with us and pick any song you want, and I'll go over in bloody detail how to take any song and turn it into a jazz masterpiece on your guitar. So look us up, get hip with jazz chords today, and let's have fun strumming. Get the complete lesson by clicking the link in the comments below, or simply going to jamalong.org and searching on the lesson title in the search bar. See you at JamAlong.